Good morning and welcome to everyone. The attacks that occurred or were thwarted this day 10 years ago were, until then, an unimaginable magnitude and impact. The events of September 11, 2001 touched all Americans in some manner. For those who do not live in the impacted communities, who did not have a family member, friend, or colleague perish or injured in the attacks, we were all touched through the unity that binds us as a nation and forms our common identity as Americans. The attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in United Flight 93 were intended in part to break our unity, our identity, and our spirit as Americans. Yet woven among the stories of broken families and senseless loss of friends and colleagues are stories of valor, sacrifice, and service that we honor and celebrate today. We recognize that those attacks intended to break our unity and identity only strengthened it and revealed our best attributes as Americans and our patriotism. The responses locally at the state level and nationally by fire, police, EMS, and military personnel, which reflected the highest measure of courage and sacrifice, remain until this day some of the most persistent and powerful themes of this experience. Today's ceremony, while intended largely to remember, honor, and memorialize those public safety employees who were injured or gave their lives in the response to the attacks, should also prompt us, while we are present here today, to acknowledge our public safety employees in our community who have chosen as a profession service in emergency response and law enforcement. It occurs to me that the same measure of courage and sacrifice are required in response to dangerous situations where the responder's own safety or even life may be at risk, whether a structure fire, flood rescue, or threatening crime scene. Whether or not an event is likely to make the national news really does not diminish the demands placed on responders or make that service any less heroic. And to that extent, the members of public safety agencies assembled here deserve an expression of respect and gratitude for choosing public service. Your choice to serve and your service make our community safer. The firefighters, the police officers, rescue and communication personnel stand with military personnel as a role model for our community. You demonstrate some of the best attributes and qualities of the American spirit: courage, sacrifice, concern for others, to which all community members should aspire. While this morning we look back with a ceremony of memorialization, let us too look forward with gratitude, respect, and honor for those that carry the traditions of selfless service, courage, and determination in their service to our community. I would be remiss this morning if I didn't mention that my colleague, Waynesboro Councilman Mike Harris, shared with me the other day that he was called to the Pentagon on September 11, 2001, and he saw the terrible carnage and destruction. And I would like to thank Mike and anyone else here today who served our fellow man on that tragic day. We are united as Americans. So too, we acknowledge the unity and brotherhood among firefighters, law enforcement officers, emergency responders, and emergency telecommunicators. Together, we mourn your loss and we celebrate with appreciation your commitment to serve and protect us all. And may we forever be one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and God bless you all.
We have with us this morning law enforcement officers, firefighters, emergency medical services personnel, public safety 911 communications officers, emergency management personnel, the flight crew from Air Care 5, and representatives from the America's Armed Forces. These individuals are the front line and the first line of protection that we as Americans can count on every day as we go on with our daily lives at work, school, and even while we sleep. They give of themselves with selfless dedication to ensure that all of us are safe each and every day. They put their lives on the line each time they respond to a call for help, enter a burning building, enforce our laws, bandage our wounds, care for our illnesses, protect our country, and ensure our liberty. These individuals miss meals, special events, such as holidays, sporting and school events, and they do so not for personal gain, but because of the love for their fellow man and their desire to provide service. They risk their lives each and every day for all of us, regardless of what age, sex, race, or nationality we are. Today we honor all those who provide the blanket of protection that we are all afforded, and we remember and memorialize those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for their fellow man. John 15, verse 13, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends," is a verse that our public safety personnel, organizations, and associations live by every day, and that holds true for all that we do in public safety. We must also remember the sacrifice that the men and women of our armed forces have made and continue to make in providing and defending our freedom and in the ongoing war against terrorism. Without them and their sacrifice, we most likely would not be assembled here today. Lastly, but certainly not least, we honor the families of our public safety first responders and our military who make an even bigger sacrifice as the responders themselves. Without the support of our families, our task would be much more difficult. 10 years ago today, the unthinkable happened again. The day that would live in infamy occurred for a second time. Not since 6:30 a.m. on December the 7th, 1941, had our country experienced an attack of such magnitude on American soil. In 1941, there were those who said it couldn't happen, even after being warned it was imminent. In 2001, the message was much the same. While there had been other acts of terrorism, such as the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995 and the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, none would awaken us as much as the morning of September the 11th. It was a beautiful sunny day in Arlington, Virginia, New York City, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at 8:45 on Tuesday, September the 11th. People were going on with their daily lives just as they did every other day, not knowing that just a mere 1 minute later, their lives and the lives of millions of Americans and others around the world would be changed forever. An articulate attack planned over many years would shake America to her core. Over the next 2 hours, 2,996 people would die and over 6,000 would be injured in New York City, at the Pentagon, and in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Of those who perished that day, 343 were firefighters and paramedics. 60 were law enforcement officers who responded to the incidents. Men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for their fellow man. The war on terrorism has taken an even greater toll. As of September the 8th, 2011, there have been 6,227 American soldiers killed and 45,889 wounded in Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation New Dawn, and Operation Enduring Freedom. A decade has passed, and while we all know what happened that fateful day in September of 2001, we often allow past time and our busy lives to take the place of remembering the significance of the day and those who were lost. The message today is that we can never forget. Never forget the price that our citizens, emergency responders, and military paid and continue to pay today for the liberty that we all enjoy. So as you go forth today, keep in your hearts and minds those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and our protection, both home and abroad. The next time you speak with a dispatcher or see a fire engine, police car, or ambulance, or one of the many personnel who staff them, or a member of our armed forces, take the time to stop and remember what they give for you each day. Say thank you for their service, and most importantly, keep them all in your prayers, that they will remain safe each day as they carry out God's work for their fellow man. May God richly bless all of those who serve for Him and for each of us and may God bless America. Thank you.
This time I'm going to ask that all public safety, both past and present, along with all military past and present, please stand and be recognized. Thank you. This year, it's almost impossible to escape the sounds and images of 9/11. Politicians and pundits are taking advantage of the 10-year anniversary to speak out on all sorts of issues, from overseas military and counterterrorism strategy to whether or not Homeland Security grant funds have made us safer in the United States. And yes, there are some who talk about the people who made the ultimate sacrifice that day, including the FDNY firefighters, without whom the civilian casualty toll, experts agree, would have been much higher. I guess I can't help but wonder where all the talking heads will be next year on the 11th anniversary, or where they were last year when so many 9/11 responders were denied compensation for their continuing medical problems. While I understand the need for our nation to move past 9/11 as part of the healing process, I suppose I'm afraid that while we say we will never forget, that has already started to happen. Fire departments in many cities, towns, and counties are still being decimated by budget cuts, and firefighters are still being scorned for their pay and benefits. Yet we are still at war, not just with terrorists, foreign and domestic, who seek to harm us for their twisted ends, but with the daily ravages of uncontrolled fires and other emergencies. Perhaps the best way for us to honor the memory of those who perished on 9/11 is to constantly remind those around us, starting with our friends, neighbors, and family members, just like you here today, that local firefighters will always be on the front lines for any tragedy, along with all public safety that befalls our communities, just as they were in September of 2001, and just as they will be on September 12th and beyond. There are thousands of stories related to that tragic day, but none that capture its full meaning to me as the one I wish to share with you today. It goes as follows. A man from Norfolk, Virginia called a local radio station to share this on September 11th, 2003. His name was Robert Matthews. These are his words. A few weeks before September 11th, 2001, my wife and I found out we were going to have our first child. She planned a trip out to California to visit her sister. On our way to the airport, we prayed that God would grant my wife a safe trip and be with her. Shortly after I said amen, we both heard a loud pop and the car shook violently. We had blown out a tire. I replaced the tire as quickly as I could, but we still missed our flight. Both very upset, we drove home. I received a call from my father, who was a retired FDNY. He asked what my wife's flight number was, but I explained we had missed the flight. My father informed me that her flight was the one that crashed into the South Tower. I was too shocked to speak. My father also had more news for me. He was going to help. This is not something I can just sit by for, he said. I have to do something. I was concerned for his safety, of course, but more because he had never given his life to Christ. After a brief debate, I knew his mind was made up. Before he got off the phone, he said, "Take good care of my grandchild." Those were the last words I ever heard my father say. He died while helping in the rescue effort. My joy that my prayer of safety for my wife had been answered quickly became anger. Anger at God, at my father, and at myself. I had gone for nearly 2 years blaming God for taking my father away. My son would never know his grandfather. My father had never accepted Christ, and I had never got to say goodbye to him. Then something happened. About 2 months ago, I was sitting at home with my wife and my son when there was a knock at the door. I looked at my wife, but I could tell she wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to a couple with a small child. The man looked at me and asked if my father's name was Jake Matthews. I told him it was. He quickly grabbed my hand and said, "I never got the chance to meet your father, but it is an honor to meet his son." He explained to me that his wife had worked at the World Trade Center and had been caught inside after the attack. She was pregnant at the time and had been caught under debris. He then explained that my father had been the one to find his wife and free her. My eyes welled up with tears as I thought of my father giving his life for people like this. He then said, "There is something else you need to know." His wife then told me that as my father worked to free her, she talked to him and led him to Christ. I began sobbing at the news. Now I know that when I get to heaven, my father will be standing beside Jesus to welcome me, and that this family would be able to thank him themselves. When their baby was born, they named him Jacob Matthew in honor of the man who gave his life so mother and baby could live. This short story should help us all here today to realize two things. First, that though it has been 10 years since the attacks, we should never let it become a mere tragic memory. And second, but most important, God is always in control. We may not see the reason behind things, and we may never know this side of heaven, but God is always in control. Thank you, and God bless.
It is an honor to stand here with you today and welcome so many outstanding community leaders, public servants, and dedicated members of our emergency services and military families. As we mark the 10th anniversary of the deadliest terror attacks ever carried out against the United States, it is fitting that we take time not only to reflect on the devastation we witnessed in New York City, in Arlington, Virginia, and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, but to also remember the heroes who were killed, fulfilling the sacred responsibility that our nation's first responders willingly and courageously accept each day. Because of those heroes, the anniversary we observe every September 11th will always be far more than about the buildings that our enemies brought down or the damage they inflicted on our fellow citizens. It is about honoring the heroism that we witnessed on that fateful day and the resilience that the American people have continued to show ever since. It is also about offering our strongest support to our first responders, our military service members, and of course, their families who have sacrificed so much to keep us safe. In the crowd gathered here today, too many of our colleagues, friends, and loved ones are missing. But in both spirit and memory, they will always be with us. Their examples of bravery and heroism will continue to guide and inspire our own efforts to strengthen the cause they serve so faithfully and so well. Every day, we are the beneficiaries of their service and their willingness to stand on the front lines of our nation's fight against crime, violence, and terrorism. Let us not forget the 2,996 people who perished September 11, 2001, after the hijacked planes crashed in New York City, Virginia, and in Pennsylvania. The victims were mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers of many different faiths and races who came from more than 80 nations. Let us not forget the selfless courage shown by the police officers, firefighters, and first responders who rushed into unknown dangers to save the lives of others. If there is any bright spot to be found through the tragedies of the lives lost that we honor here today, it is that they bring us closer together. It is our solidarity in mourning and our commitment to honoring their lives that strengthens us all to work together. So I challenge us to look into the future and focus on renewing our commitment to the public service and to protecting the safety of our fellow citizens. To those we honor here today who have made the ultimate sacrifice, the words, "thank you," will never be enough, but we are so very thankful. To the families and friends of those that we honor here today, we offer our eternal gratitude for sharing your loved ones and their special gift to serve and protect. We extend to you our continued support and promise that their heroic and ultimate sacrifices will never be in vain. We will always remember. In closing, I would like to leave you with a few verses from the book of Matthew. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. May God bless the fallen heroes we honor here today, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.